Hey guys, I'm back with another ranting video, or I guess this time you could call it a Q&A, because today I have a few questions the people have asked over the span of my videos of my AU with Q in it, and I wanted to answer some of y'all's questions regarding my AU, so if you guys still have any other questions that you want me to answer, you can comment them on this video. If I get any more comments on the video after I post this, I'll answer some of those on my other videos too. Also, I hope you guys like the background I made. It's very cutesy, unlike my AU that's literally just the colors black, white, and red, basically, so don't get used to it. Anyways, first question we have up is from Celestial Clouds on YouTube, who asked me this question. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, I have to put this on the video because this is like genuinely such a good question that I really wanted to answer. Hi, so given the time frame, will the main cast hold a sort of negative attitude towards mentally ill or disordered people? I'm curious because I do like a mix of realism and fantasy in this situation. I feel as though some characters would be OOC if they just accepted things like that off the bat too. Also, will we ever get a full rundown of what happened to Giyu? Okay, for your first question, will any of the characters have a negative attitude towards Giyu since he is mentally ill in my AU? I would definitely have to say yes. And it's mainly because of the fact that they would think, should we really be having a mentally ill person as a Hashira? Like, can they even do their job correctly? Which is a fair argument. All of the Hashira will basically think this way, excluding Sabito since he already knows him. Mitsuri because eventually I would like to show how she becomes slightly friends with him or tries to be more nice to him. Shinobu, obviously she feels that way, but since she's a doctor, she has a little bit of a different perspective on that fact. And I also made a video of Rengoku trying to communicate with Tomioka, if you guys seen that, but they think oddly of it, but because they know that Giyu can do his job, they don't think as much of it until it gets to a certain point. And for your next question, will we ever get a full rundown of what happened to Giyu? Yes, definitely. That's probably going to be one of the next things I work on, because like I've mentioned before on YouTube and on TikTok, I want to make an actual comic of this. I'm not sure how long it would take, but considering, I would say I'm a pretty fast drawer, but making a full-on comic is a little bit of a different story, so I would like to get that out as soon as possible, but eventually I'll have a full comic of what happened to Giyu and how he ended up in the mental institution. I've already hinted at a few key points of his backstory and some of the little skits or animations, I guess you could call them, that I've made, so if you ever want to like dig deeper into the story that hasn't actually been written out yet that I've posted, I would consider looking at YouTube at the descriptions and the descriptions on my TikTok videos, because I'll usually have a POV posted so you understand what's happening. These next two questions are both very similar, so I'll be answering both of them. Both are asking what is Giyu's relationship with the Kamado siblings, and to be honest, that's kind of a tricky question because Giyu in my AU is genuinely just a tricky character. I've tried to make it clear in some of my skits of my videos that Giyu hates demons, and although yes he does hate demons in canon, it's even more apparent in my AU, or at least I try to make it seem that way. I've put in multiple of my little skit videos that I've made that Sabito is alive in this AU and works with Giyu as the Water Hashira as well, so they both usually do missions together. The master did this as a safety precaution so Sabito could look out for Giyu in case anything were to happen. However, he saw that both of them worked best when they were together. So like in canon, when Giyu sees that Nezuko wasn't trying to attack him, was trying to protect Tanjiro instead of it being Giyu that saw that, it's Sabito. Just like in canon at the Hashira meeting where they're deciding what to do with Tanjiro and Nezuko, I drew that out, but it was also with Sabito, and Sabito basically said that he was a firm believer that Nezuko would not do harm because of the fact Master Uro Kodaki placed a spell on Nezuko so she would see humans as her family, and just because he believed that she wouldn't harm anybody genuinely. Giyu, however, was way more skeptical and thought that Nezuko would eventually, like all demons, end up harming somebody. However, because of Sabito's wishes, he made himself give Nezuko and Tanjiro a chance, even though, in his heart, he did not trust them. Sabito is still a little bit hard on Tanjiro, despite him saving him and his sister, just like in canon when he meets him as a ghost, because that's just his personality. However, he does start to become close with the Kamado siblings. He's interested in him and Nezuko because of their weird predicament that they're in, with Nezuko being a demon who doesn't eat people, obviously. But other than that, he only starts to really get close with them or talk to them nearing the Infinity Castle, or kind of like in canon with Giyu. Giyu is really just genuinely confused with Tanjiro. He doesn't understand how he can live with himself knowing that his sister's a demon. So to him, it feels blasphemous, almost even. And he fully trusts in Master Uro Kodaki's abilities that he placed upon Nezuko to make her see people as her family, so other than that, Giyu trusts Nezuko, but as a whole, he doesn't trust her enough to not harm humans. If it wasn't for Sabito or Master Uro Kodaki's input, Giyu would have definitely killed Nezuko, without a doubt. So Giyu himself personally never grows a relationship with either of the siblings. However, I can see Tanjiro being really curious about Giyu considering his mental illness and the fact that he's a Hashira and just everything surrounding him. I don't want to confirm anything about the final battle with Muzan with any of the characters yet, just because I might experiment with a little bit of some stuff, but if Giyu were to survive, I feel like since Nezuko does turn back human, he would be really interested in her at that point and be like, so how is it like as a demon? And stuff like that. So if he were to survive after the final battle with Muzan, then I could see him having somewhat of a relationship with them. I'm just not sure if they would be considered close. The next question is by Lovely on YouTube. They ask, I'm wondering, we know Sabito didn't die, but in the end, who ends up being stronger? Gyu is obviously a lot more reckless, and that may hinder him, but also work in his favor when fighting. So I'm just curious. I'm also curious about the list in general of the Hashiras. I'm gonna answer your last question first, because that one's the easiest for me to answer. In general, Gyu is still in the same ranking and physical strength as he is in canon, because I didn't really want to change that part, because I didn't want to make him overly powerful or just weaker in general, because I didn't think it fit his character even in the AU. And since Sabito and Gyu shared the same rank as the Water Hashira, I would like to think that in terms of strength they're around the same area, it's just how they act in battle that's different. In terms of combat styles, Gyu's a lot more reckless compared to Sabito and takes a lot of other chances that other Hashira or just slayers in general wouldn't normally take. This is because of his mental illness and just because he likes to make demons suffer on purpose. I mentioned how Gyu likes to torture demons using his bare hands, which is another part of why their fighting styles are different. But because they know each other so well, if they were to spar against each other, it would probably take forever for one of them to actually win, or they would end up just forfeiting both of them, just because they know it would probably last forever. Next question is from TikTok from Annie, who asked, was he always schizophrenic, or did he only get schizophrenia when his sister died? In my AU, Gyu is not born with schizophrenia, but it is triggered from the fact that Sutaku died in front of him due to a demon attack. And because of that, he ended up having to kill the demon who killed his sister right after that. And adding on to that, the villagers in Gyu's village at the time thought that he was crazy for saying that Sutaku was killed by a demon. All of these traumatic events eventually led to Gyu starting to hallucinate things, but it mostly stemmed from hallucinations of Sutaka. He definitely didn't hallucinate as frequently as he does now, but he would occasionally have hallucinations of Sutaka. However, his hallucinations start to get worse when he gets sent to the mental institute because of the environment and because of the drugs that they had him on. Another user on TikTok commented, when the other Hashira talked about Gyu and their thoughts about him, some of them mentioned how much happier and nicer he is with Sabito than the rest of them. So I was wondering, what are the other Hashira's opinions on Gyu and Sabito's relationship? It's all apparent to the other Hashira that Gyu deeply cares for Sabito and that they have a close relationship as it is. However, some of the characters like Sanemi and Obanai think that it's a little bit annoying how Gyu really only ever answers to Sabito. But then there's characters like Gyame, Mitsuru, and Shinobu who are happy that Gyu has somebody who he can relate to and rely on, because he doesn't really talk to anybody else. All of the Hashira respect Sabito, however, it's a lot harder for them to get along with Gyu considering how he acts the way he does in front of all of them. Also, another question that I feel like I've seen a couple of times from just a number of people, so I'm not even going to put a screenshot, is does Gyu have maladaptive daydreaming? And to be honest, I don't even know how to answer that. I would say technically yes, but it's more of his schizophrenia than I would say maladaptive daydreaming. Next question is from TikTok from Miguel. Thank you for living my art, you guys are so sweet, but the question is, does Shinobi slowly gain Gyu's trust? Not really, if I'm being completely honest. This is mainly from the fact that Shinobu is a doctor. And I try to make it clear that in my AU, Gyu does not like doctors because it gives him flashbacks or PTSD to the mental institution. So just because of that fact, I would have to say no, but there may be points in the story where I'll add moments where he slightly trusts her, but because of past incidents, he can't bring himself to fully trust her to do anything or have a relationship with her. Kind of like this scene in my little skit that I made with Rengoku, showing how because of his guilty conscience and his schizophrenia, like the voices in his head, that he can't bring himself to become friends with Rengoku. And here is the last question I will be answering today from Athena on TikTok. Does your AU have any ships that diverge from canon? Also, is Sabito a Hashira or a Kanoe? For your first question, I would have to say no. I avoided adding any uncanon ships to the AU just because I didn't think it made sense to add romance into a story that was supposed to be about past traumatic events. I've made it to where he has certain relationships with other characters, but not in a romantic way. And for your second question, yes, Sabito is a Hashira alongside Gyu. They both share the same title as the Water Pillar. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you guys are enjoying my AU. From what I've seen, you guys are really liking it, and I'm glad that you guys are enjoying my art. It makes me happy that you guys like it. If you want to comment any more questions under this video, feel free to ask, and I'll answer them in a part 2. Bye-bye!